welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm glad you've made the connection and are with us today. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and we like to explore a wide range of topics that help us see ourselves, our community, and the world around us in ways that get us thinking. Perhaps get us thinking artistically, or thinking scientifically, or thinking business-wise, but they're all kind of part of the connection. We want to get inspired or challenged to do just a bit more because we've made the connection. We're talking today about books, about writing books, exploring books, and we're going to take the opportunity to talk with both an author and an editor about the process of writing books. Because I believe that everyone out there has a story within them, a story that they'd like to share, but maybe they don't know how, or maybe they don't feel like they're good enough, or maybe they don't know how to get started, and they need someone to help guide them in the process. So we'll use the opportunity of having Michael Dardis, who just has completed The Dark Side of the Sun in the last few years and is writing his second in the looks like it's going to be at least a threesome, you think, of a book collection. Maybe 5, maybe 7. Who knows in this series? There's enough to do enough in this series. It's The Dark Side of the Sun. Michael Dardis, Minnesota author. Welcome.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And we also have Angela Weekman, who is of AMW Editing, who really stood side by side in helping to guide and support. I have this image almost like Ariel in Prospero's Tempest, the
Yes.
Shakespeare, that you don't really see, but it's all part of the magic that makes things happen, that brings things to life. Michael wrote a beautiful book that I'd like to have you consider giving to a friend or buying for yourself for the holidays, The Dark Side of the Sun. It takes place over a 40-year period, and you experience 2 wars, brave people fighting through the darkness, just to discover that there's love and hope and honor. You get to go through living in Detroit in the Great Depression. You're in Nazi Germany the next moment. You're in Vietnam the next moment. And through it all, you're looking at love and family and what connects us and what are the challenges. So lots to cover when you're editing a book that has so many dimensions, that have so many sub-stories. I'm not even going to say subplots. These are fully contained stories that together create an understanding of the historical context. Quite the challenge, but something that you both feel very strongly was better done by having the both of you work on it.
Yes. These are choppy waters, and you need somebody out there with you in that process.
And this is part 2. If you missed last week's, I encourage you to go back to our podcast and listen to last week as well. We're going to do a little deeper dive about the process of writing, and I also, during this period of doing the deeper dive, I hope that you'll reflect on your own story and what you'd like to write and what you'd like to do, and think of it in terms of that as well. So I'd like to start with Angela. Tell me about your background and why you became an editor. I know that in college you did a lot of forensic competition, and you were able to do the commercials and do our show last week with Delight and Aplomb. So I know that you're a good communicator and that you love communicating. But how did you move towards editing?
Well, I think, honestly, everything begins in the beginning, of course. So in the beginning, I was that kid who read and read and read and read, and I wrote and wrote and wrote. I have still binders and binders of all these little stories and not so little stories, big stories that I was writing.
And did you have an editor?
I did not have an editor.
You need an editor.
I did. That would have been lovely. I got into high school, and that's actually where I was in with speech, the speech competitions. Absolutely. I did a little bit of drama, but actually my destiny was set when there was a conflict in my schedule in high school between whether I wanted to be in the drama club or whether I wanted to do the high school newspaper. and the high school newspaper won out. So here
And
I
for
am.
me, I got in the drama club. So there you go.
Yes. So I am now here today talking to you about editing because of a little, scheduling problem with 6-hour high school back in Brainerd, Minnesota. But when I got into the high school newspaper, it was like finding myself in water and not realizing all along I've been this fish longing for water. It was so natural. It was so perfect. And not just the actual, the mechanics, like what we talked about last week with the copy editing. It was, again, I was already going deeper with this sense of immersion, and importantly, the sense of being able to collaborate and work with these writers. Now, these writers are just teenagers. They're my friends. They're people who are maybe even older than me, upperclassmen. And it was so natural. And I knew from the beginning that this was a process that required trust and positive encouragement.
And my guess is you knowing these friends the way that you did, you knew what they were trying to say, but it wasn't always coming out on the paper.
Yes.
It wasn't always coming up on the copy that they were giving you.
Correct.
And you can do more.
Yes.
There's more to this story.
Yes.
And how you would encourage them, I assume.
Yes. And I think, too, that right away that teaching aspect, that growth aspect was there. I remember in my senior year, there was a sophomore who was on the staff, and he was so earnest, and he wanted so badly to write a front page story, and he needed some editing. He needed a lot of editing. And we worked all year long, and by the end, he was markedly improved, and he got that front page story. And I actually took that experience with me when I was in college. Then I went to the U, thought I was going to go into journalism because I thought that's what the newspaper experience in high school had taught me, that I wanted to be a journalist. But then I realized, no, if I'm going to write, I want to be on the creative, the literary side of things. So I went for to be an English major, emphasis in creative writing, and quickly realized, this was back in, I began at the U in 1996. We didn't have self-publishing yet. If you wanted to be a writer, you had to get through some gate somewhere, and that just didn't happen. So if you wanted to be a writer, you basically wanted to have no money.
and the internet hadn't really taken off in the way that it is now.
No.
Where self-publishing is viable with the channels of communication that we have.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that we do have these. So, but back then I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this? And I started thinking back to the high school newspaper. And I thought about especially that one student who I really helped. And I thought, I think this means I should be a teacher. And so like any English major, teaching is kind of, you feel like you have so few options, I think, when you think inside the box about what you can do with that kind of a major. But then I realized, no, I don't think I really want teaching. So I don't know. And I remember talking to one of my academic advisors, and I said, well, I had this, editing experience back in high school, and she just stopped me.
What?
Yes.
Tell me more.
Tell me more. She said, we need good editors. And there was actually an editing course taught by Jean Barker Nunn. She was absolutely fantastic. I owe so much to what she taught us with an intro class and then an advanced class the next year. But until that point, I honestly never thought, hey, I could be an editor. That is a thing. That is a job. That is a career. And once I realized this is a possibility, I never looked back.
Because it pulled in teaching, but it wasn't the requirement of 30.
Yes.
It was doing the deeper dive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think straight out of college, I went right into a job at a traditional publishing house. I was there for about 8-9 years. And now the last 10, 11, I've been freelancing, which I love. Just this is where I get to do this immersion editing idea. I get to do classes for authors, actual teaching. I do classes for editing. And especially with working with self-publishing authors like Michael, this is an entirely different field than working in traditional publishing. Traditional publishing is wonderful. It's a great route for many people. But in the end, traditional publishing, you typically are giving up on a dotted line, literally, some creative control, if not all the creative control. And having worked on both sides of that process as an editor, I see the difference. And boy, I sure like being on this side where I'm working with authors who say, this, I'm putting the investment behind this, and I'm putting the accountability behind this. And I want this I want my dream to come to fruition in a way that is authentic to me. And I'm here as the editor to help that happen.
How many authors will you be working with typically?
Probably it could be anywhere from within any given time. I might have, honestly, 10, 12, 15 projects going at once.
Keeping track of all of that.
Oh, it is. It is.
I envision a spreadsheet.
There is a spreadsheet. It's in OneNote, and there's a spreadsheet. Now, whether I can actually keep up with it, a lot of the spreadsheet just happens in my brain, but it's an ebb and flow, you know, and I think because this is a deeper process, you know, I'll take an afternoon, work on Michael's book, and then off it goes with that one chapter to him, and then I move on in the next day to this other person's. But it all balances out, and I wouldn't want it any other way, because it's difficult to say no to someone when I see this amazing story, and I'm just so excited to dive in with them.
And for more information, you can go to amwediting.com and see all the cool things that Angela's working on. We're also in our next segment going to talk with Michael about the experience as a first-time writer. What was that like, and why it was important for him to have a partner like Angela. And I want, again, for our audience to be thinking about, this could be your process. Maybe you've got that book, or maybe you've written another book, but this book that you have inside you needs to have a bit more, a partner to help make it real and make it come to life. So stay with us. We'll be right back after a few commercials. And Michael Dardis's book is The Dark Side of the Sun, and you can look up his work at michaeldardis.com. During November, the American Diabetes Association is highlighting the numbers that matter most for those living with or at risk of diabetes. If you're unaware of your risk, take the first step by taking the risk test. Get your blood glucose tested and have a conversation with your doctor. If you're living with diabetes, take the first steps for a healthy lifestyle that will make a huge difference. Count Me In is a call to action for all of us. For more information, be sure to visit diabetes.org.
Writing a book is like diving into deep, uncharted waters. That's why you need immersion editing. I'm Angela Weekman of amwediting.com. After 20 years of experience, I believe editing should be meaningful and empowering. So let's get started with an immersion assessment. We'll immerse in a portion of your manuscript to determine your next steps. Visit amwediting.com for more details. Let's go deeper.
This is Chad, owner of AM 950. Our station has worked with Barbara from WYSIWYG Web Design for years on everything from logo to print design, and especially for developing our website. She does great work and is great to work with, listening to what our goals and design ideas were while offering new, innovative ideas to create the website we are proud of today. Barbara made sure she understood our station, our goals, and our mission before she started working on our site, and made suggestions to help control the cost. Plus, she's friendly, which set us at ease. I recommend Barbara at WYSIWYG Web Design because I know she will deliver an attractive, professional website within the budget you have. She is a local independent business that specializes in helping other local businesses achieve their website and design goals. She can work with nearly any budget and create anything from simple sites to robust custom functionality. To find out more about the company AM 950 trusts, go to WYSIWYGWebDesign.com. Spelled out just like it sounds, WYSIWYGWebDesign.com.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe from the Eastside Freedom Library, and I'd like to tell you about an historic place on Payne Avenue. Brunson's Pub is a place where history and passion are a part of every detail, starting with the menu. The Payne Phelan neighborhood arose from Dakota people who lived here for hundreds of years, and pioneering immigrant communities, Irish, Swedes, German, and Italians, who made the East Side their home. More recently, waves of new residents from Asia, Latin America, and Africa continue the rich immigrant history and are revitalizing the community's cultural life and economy. Come experience Brunson's Pub at 956 Payne Avenue and grab a discounted gift card when you mention that you're an AM 950 listener or a supporter of the Eastside Freedom Library. Be sure to check out brunsonspub.com.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter. I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and we're talking this week about writing books. Do you have a book inside you that you want written? Well, perhaps today you'll think about it in new ways and how to get partners to help make that happen. We're talking with Michael Dardis, who wrote The Dark Side of the Sun and is working on the sequel now. And we have Angela Weekman, who is the editor of both The Dark Side of the Sun and the upcoming new sequel book.
Yes.
Sometime maybe in the next year or two. It will
We'll be getting it next year.
Oh, next year. Okay. Well, welcome, Michael.
Thank you much, Lori. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and welcome, Angela. We're glad you're here. In our last segment, Angela shared about how she discovered what it meant to be an editor, as well as realizing that this was where her heart was and what she best likes to do, and the opportunity of being able to work with bringing out the best in the authors that she works with. And now in this segment, I'd like to learn from Michael about taking that idea to write and putting it into a book. And what's your background that allows us to have an access to your inspiration for creating a book?
Well, I have a love for history that goes back probably because of my family. My mother and father were quite a bit older than the average generation when I was born. My father would have been 128 years old today. My mother was born in 1902. My family in the Irish side, my father was Irish, was one of the pioneer families in Waseca. They settled in the 1850s. I have a great uncle that served in the Civil War and against the Sioux War in 1861 in Minnesota. My mother's family were from Finland, and my grandfather was in the Russian army. And I have relatives that fought against the Russians during the Great Winter War in 1940. So history to me is
a great backdrop for history.
Yeah. Yes.
So I have this affinity, and I also served in Vietnam. And part of the reason for my story is that I had the story of what experiences in Vietnam that I wanted to put out. And I used this fictional character to display not only my story, but also the story of many other soldiers and nurses that I witnessed when I was in Vietnam. So it goes back to that historical focus. And people have told me that I not only like history, but I live it. Well, I can honestly say that's true.
And you were hungry to have an opportunity to have that be expressed, because I know we've talked before about your colleagues, and that not always did the Vietnam experience get translated in ways that people could access and understand.
So many of the Vietnam veterans, and I work with a lot of them now, never received any respect at all. In some cases, for the first time in 50 years, they received some welcomes in the last few years.
And respect for what they did to serve our country.
The suffering and the disrespect. And the book tries to display that, what the soldiers knew they were going to address when they came back versus what they had to deal with, even those that did not support the war, which very few, I think, supported it after they left, even if they supported it when they were there. But that whole process of being able to address the fact that the country was largely ungrateful in showing any respect or treatment for things such as PTSD or Agent Orange issues that went on.
And many did not choose to go. The draft enforced them going. And how to, then they may, even if they had a sense of I'm serving my country and my duty, how that changed in the process of serving?
Well, I think the process, that's true. I mean, they had the choice. It was a felony if you refused the draft. If you and that was on your record, you would not be able to get a job. You came out of jail. It wasn't until much later that the amnesty was given to the draft protesters. So basically, unless you had a lot of strength, from political strength, financial strength, where you
Or
could,
friends in Canada.
friends in Canada that could lead you on. The Canadians had some limits about how many they could take into Canada. In my tradition in my family, at some point, I opposed the war before I went in, but I couldn't run away from it either. It was one of these things like, well, you have a surgery that you don't want to face, and you have the choice of either dying or having the surgery. You have the surgery, and you hope you survive it. And that's kind of what we went in. We went in with the idea that we were trying to survive, going to survive. I had friends. I have six people that I know that are on the Vietnam Wall. 3 of them are classmates, one I knew very well, 2 I knew very well, and 3 from my unit that died in combat. Many of us were wounded there. I was wounded, as well as 35 others in my unit. So the sacrifice was obvious.
And very different from the Great War. You know, the sense that World War II had at least a purpose that made sense, that you could rally behind. And horrific.
Yes.
But there was still a sense of a glory in serving.
Well, I think the issue, too, is we were attacked in World War II by the Japanese, and that was a fight that needed to be done for the Holocaust that was going on. That's why I try to address that in the book as well. Even some of the Germans that went over there realized that they made a mistake and tried to escape to get back. So there was, it was a good fight. It was the good fight. And I think normally when you're fighting, you're always fighting for your friends and yourself. There isn't too much glory at the level where you have to put the rubber to the road and fight somebody face to face. It's survival and for your friends and so forth.
And when the mission is confusing and the war is confusing.
And when there's no apparent reason.
Yeah.
You just, I was in a heavy artillery unit.
There was an absurdity to it at the bottom line.
We shot. We were on a fire base that had been occupied by the French and had been overrun by the Viet Cong. But when the French were there, we were on that fire base and had been occupied for quite a few years by American artillery units. We were the last one there. But we shot and we shot and we shot and we shot, and we blew a lot of jungle up. And, there was no real reason. Nothing really changed. The enemy still came at us, and finally they were successful and blew us up. But, beyond that, there was kind of a never-ending story that it would just suffer.
I have to say, in the book, you captured that well. There was this, the sense of ennui. What does this all mean? Why is this going on? What is the survival? I mean, and I think not enough people understand what that did to folks who were living in those moments. And I think this gives you a little bit more understanding by reliving it through the book, or living it through the book, through their eyes, the absurdity and the horror at the same time.
Well, there's things that you remember, the smells, the look, the absurd things that were done, the foolish orders that were given, the fools that were giving those orders, and oftentimes, and what people had to do, and what price they paid for those orders. I mean, there was plenty of that from my personal experience.
To draw from.
I listened to, I remember there was one radio conversation we had with a forward observer. I worked in an artillery fire direction center. And we listened to a lieutenant that was out with an ARVN unit with this American radio operator sergeant as they were being abandoned by the South Vietnamese Army. And they were facing the attack of an NVA battalion. And we had to listen to them be killed live
Horrific.
on the radio.
Horrific.
And those kind of things you never forget. And
it creates a desire to write. I have to believe from the get-go that there's something that people need to understand and how to bring that to them.
Well, to me, it was kind of a latent PTSD issue that I found. The more I wrote about it, the more it came to the surface again and again. And my wife had never experienced that with me. Typical with the Vietnam veterans, they never talked about it. Nobody wanted to hear it, so you suppressed it. There was no help there. There was no counseling available.
So in some ways, art became healing as well.
Yes, indeed.
And art can be healing for you, too, in looking at what are those stories that are within you that need to come out, not only for you, but for all of us around you. So we're going to keep talking about that and thinking about that. In the next segment, we'll bring back Angela to talk about the process of creating those stories. So stay with us.
Twin Cities Ballet is proudly celebrating 10 years of a Minnesota Nutcracker at Ames Center in Burnsville, December 13th through the 15th. Twin Cities Ballet presents this beloved holiday classic with a Minnesota twist and is one of the most attended must-see holiday events in the Twin Cities. Twin Cities Ballet's A Minnesota Nutcracker will provide delightful entertainment for your whole family. Tickets on sale now at twincitiesballet.org. twincitiesballet.org.
This is New Beginnings, hosted by award-winning broadcaster and speaker Freddie Bell.
Freddie, this generation of the baby boomers, people are living longer, so the baby boomers are taking care of elderly parents.
Let's talk about your health, and specifically, let's talk about Medicare. Our show features the concerns of America's 78 million baby boomers in employment, finance, health and nutrition, and even entertainment.
Join us for New Beginnings, Saturday mornings at 11, brought to you in part by Vision Loss Resources.
Writing a book is like diving into deep, uncharted waters. That's why you need immersion editing. I'm Angela Weekman of AMWEditing.com. After 20 years of working on hundreds of professionally published books, I believe editing should be meaningful and empowering. It should guide both you and your manuscript to full potential. Most editors barely dip their toes into these waters, but I'll immerse myself in your manuscript, internalizing your message, vision, and voice. I'll also immerse myself in a relationship with you, creating a positive connection built on trust, respect, and rapport. So writers, come take the plunge. I offer a wide range of editorial services to fit your book's needs. Or let's get started with an immersion assessment. We'll immerse in a portion of your manuscript to determine your next steps. Visit amwediting.com for more details. Let's go deeper.
Hi, this is Ken Hageland, host of Living Healthy and Aging Well, inviting you to listen to our new show airing on Saturdays from noon to 1, where we talk about your health and your life and provide insights to living and aging well. Each week, we provide answers to important questions regarding health care, elder care, end-of-life care, and caregiver support to help you and your loved ones plan for the future and enjoy your highest quality of life today. Please join us every Saturday from noon to 1 for Living Healthy and Aging Well.
I'm Peter Ratcliffe from the Eastside Freedom Library, and I'd like to tell you about an historic place on Payne Avenue, Brunson's Pub. Experience history and passion through the delicious menu, reflecting the Eastside's diversity. The choices are limitless: salads, sandwiches, burgers, and shareable plates. Visit Brunson's Pub at 956 Payne Avenue and grab a discounted gift card when you mention that you're an AM 950 listener or a supporter of the Eastside Freedom Library. Be sure to check out brunsonspub.com.
With your AM 950 weather, this is Eric Nelson. Today will be mostly sunny with a high near 40, and tonight partly cloudy with a low around 30. Sunday, sunny during the day with a high near 42, but at night, rainy with a low of 34. Monday, plan on rain and snow all day with a high of 42 and a low of 29.
Eat Local, Minnesota.com's restaurant of the week is Crooner's Lounge and Supper Club. Offering a unique and contemporary spin on continental cuisine, Crooner's specializes in food and drink made popular in the 1920s. Check out this fabulous dining experience at 6161 Highway 65 Northeast in Minneapolis.
Welcome back to Connections Radio Show. I'm your host, Lori Fitz, and we're talking this week about writing books. Everyone has a story inside of them. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is Maya Angelou, who says there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. But the process of writing isn't easy, and writing well isn't easy. And if we're talking about things that are really important, it can be hard. But the stuff that's really important is important for a reason. It's important not only for us to share that story, but for others to hear and create meaning and understanding and aha moments. And I believe there's a story inside you. And I want to share with you through this show today how you might be able to connect with someone that can help you. And by learning about the relationship of an author and editor. So we have a Minnesota author, and by the way, his book is amazing, The Dark Side of the Sun. I want to encourage you to go out and get that. And that's Michael Dardis. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you much, Lori.
Michael shared in our last segment, if you are just tuning in, go back to the podcast. It's important to hear some of the early reasons why Michael was looking at sharing this book. As a Vietnam veteran, how can that initial work of the book you want to write get shaped by your experiences, and how do you bring those experiences to life? And Angela Weekman, who is with AMW Editing, that supported Michael through this process.
Yes.
So Michael shared in the last segment, really part of writing the book was reliving some post-traumatic syndrome, and how I am assuming that can happen, especially when you're going deep, that you start dealing with your own emotions. You might be dealing with experiences that had an impact, and writing helps you understand that trauma. It's part of the healing. But then you as an editor have to play a very important role to make it a safe space to be talking about that sort of stuff.
Yes. Yes. And that's, again, that comes back to you to do this work in a way that really supports the author and the manuscript, that is able to go to these levels and these depths. You have to understand that this is not just a story. It isn't just something that he just churned out and it's coming out of nowhere. It's this little story and it's on a page, and now we're just going to churn it through the editing and out it goes. This is real life that's coming on the page. The sort of
filtered by years of either living with these ideas or the challenge of these ideas that are not coming out, and how do you help birth them?
Yes. And I don't always know. Of course I knew from our, the time that we spent, especially early on in the process. This is where that relationship gets built, the trust gets laid, the foundations are put into place that we can then move forward with. I of course knew he was a Vietnam vet. We talked about that a lot. But at the same time, in any given moment in the book, if there's something happening, there's a battle scene, and those battle scenes were incredibly intense. And I'm a very I'm an intuitive person. Empathy kind of runs deep. I just immediately start feeling things, and I could feel something shifting even in me as I'm editing these words. And now I'm supposed to be, again, putting commas in the right place. I'm doing and making sure it's all in this right arrangement.
And suddenly you're in Vietnam.
And suddenly I'm in Vietnam. Yeah. And on top of it, I don't know if this is a fictional moment that is representational of Michael's true experiences or the experiences of someone he knew, or if it's completely fabricated, or maybe this was exactly word for word, moment for moment, what he experienced.
Mm-hmm. And in any case, you have to have a gentle spirit to help make it okay to be talking about something as horrific.
Yes. This is not the time to suddenly put a comment and say, well, this is a really clunky sentence. I don't know why, nobody, this doesn't belong here. No, this is...
There's a reverence.
There's a reverence. There is a respect. I spent quite a bit of commenting about just my own experience going along with the book, saying, oh my gosh, this is intense. And I wanted him to know that I was feeling that. Yes, I'm going and I'm moving sentences around, and it's working on so many levels. But
I do hear you. And I do hear what you are saying.
Yes. And not only do I hear you, but now I'm the bridge to make sure that the reader hears you. This moment that Mike felt that he put onto the word, into the page, those then are transmitted to me, and I'm in the middle. I get to work with those words. I have the honor of working with those words, and to make sure that, maybe it is little things with punctuation. Maybe it's a this word versus that word.
Or a style sheet that you can go back to and go, wait a minute. Is this really something? Are we imposing our 21st century on 1969?
Yes. Yeah. Or something as simple as, if we hyphenate this word, it might ease readability. This is, we need the reader to navigate these words so they aren't just words on a page. They are meaning. They are heart. They're story. They're real. They come alive. And that's what makes great writing great. That's why we love the books we love. And that's why when we see these other books, we go, yeah, that was okay. Yeah. All right, that's kind of fun. But, it didn't touch me. I didn't connect.
It didn't go deep enough.
It didn't go deep enough. And that was my job, to at any moment say, this needs to be honored.
Was there a moment in the process that you felt like she really gets this? That there was a trust that happened that you went, yeah, I've got a good partner here.
Well, I think I almost, as soon as she read through the manuscript and we sat down, and she was basically feeding back the story to me.
Were you a little surprised?
I was pretty amazed because not only did she have the story down, but she had the feel for the story. And that is very unusual. To take something like that, just 300, 400 pages, and to apply it back and saying, well, this is the story with this nurse and this soldier and this whatever, and to understand the movement back and forth between the historical eras and the cultural eras, building this historical continuity. And that's really what the story is. It's the historical continuity of families that wind up at this point. Could be anybody's family, but these are not unusual. It happens. And she had that feel. And I think we're looking at the wording. A lot of what I liked about that is that you allowed me to, I was using shorter bursts of words, blah, 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 blah. And I started developing a triad.
Almost like a drill sergeant.
Yeah, yes.
Like, you drive the emotion.
Yeah,
urgency.
With 3 short sentences, 3 short words, rather than an elongated process, because you got the point across right away. And I think that was really what I got. I mean, I got that out of almost right away.
And that gets back to what you were sharing last week about the difference between telling and creating the experience.
Yes.
And you help him see the importance of the experience.
Yes.
Because he knew the experience. He had felt the experience. Yeah. He was there. But the audience may not have access to that experience without some more detail, without more context.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's almost like both of us then, Michael and I, have to enter into this relationship and go deeper with this reader. And how do you do that? The reader doesn't exist quite yet. So it's almost like tapping into some sort of collective consciousness.
It is.
Almost.
It almost sounds like you're translating, though.
Yes.
There's a language that is needed for the reader.
Yeah.
And you'd have to have that grammar, that language that allows them to come into this new language that's being created.
Yes. Yes.
Having another person do that is that translation process that one that the person gets it. Secondly, that the reader is probably going to follow along now. And follow along more effectively with what the story is all about. And I think that's consistently with all the feedback I've gotten on this book. I have yet to have anybody tell me that they couldn't follow it.
Which is, I can't tell you, audience, how important that is. This is very many stories combined that then seamlessly all come together with tremendous aha.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it until practically the end how all the strings come together.
Yeah.
A little bit of a whodunit, but more about a whodunit with heart.
Yeah. Yeah, just how does history happen? How are any one of us standing right here, right now? It's because of decisions with the generations before us, of cultures before us, of historical moments before us, and to bring that all together and to show these common threads between it. And
to have some surprises along the way.
Yes. Yes, it's a huge undertaking, and I was there to make sure that all of these threads really come together in the way Mike wants them to.
And how long would you say that this whole process took to from the inkling of starting the book, drafting the book, to all through the edits?
Well, it took I think a year to write the draft, and I should say 2 years between writing and doing the historical research. The website, my website has 13 of those categories we researched on everything from Agent Orange to what happened during the Hoover administration with the spies and so forth, and even the German-American Bund in the United States, going back to the 30s. That took a year just to go through that to make sure we had massaged that, and then a year of editing. Mm-hmm. And we were ready to go to production with that.
And I looked back at my archives as I was, prepping for the show. We had 139 different files that were sent back and forth. And there were about 250 email threads, not emails, email threads. And each of those threads could have had 4 or 5 different emails back and forth. But part of that I have to believe is that your style is such that you take things in chunks. Yes.
And that, being able to really do a deep dive on each chunk and give that honor and that chunk being looked at as an entirety.
And it's different. This is a bit unorthodox. I look at it and say, this should be the rule and not the exception. It should be the other way around. But a more standard, conventional way to edit is Michael would have given his editor this entire huge manuscript and all of its complexities and emotional pieces, and that person would have said, okay, I'm going to see you in about 3 months, maybe even less.
And I'll get it ready for print.
And then, and here you go. Here it is back.
That's it.
And there's crazy track changes all over it. There's questions. What if that editor didn't quite grasp something?
Right.
There were many times.
And they took off on their own.
Yes, there were many times where I would say, is this what you meant? And then he'd say, oh, actually, no. And then I'd go, oh, okay, then we could adjust. I don't know how you could do that in one entire piece. You simply can't go deep with that.
Michael, I know that you would encourage any new author to consider the process of working with a great editor.
Absolutely. It's the greatest investment you're going to make. And frankly, any publisher is going to recommend that that's exactly what you do. Great cover, great editing.
And no doubt, Angela, you would consider a great editor.
Absolutely.
So for more information on editing, go to amwediting.com. Learn about Angela's style. And for a great book for the holidays, go to michaeldardis.com and learn about his great book, and make sure you order it too, The Dark Side of the Sun. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Michael Dardis. I want to share with you the excitement I'm receiving from the readers of my novel, The Dark Side of the Sun. It's been described as an action-packed crossword puzzle that eventually comes together, revealing a real mystery that could have changed the course of World War II. The novel is a work of historical fiction covering 40 years of struggles by 6 families across parts of 5 continents. They are ordinary people in extraordinary times. It is about relationships. They make difficult decisions to survive and maintain their love for each other and their country. You can follow the continuing story at michaeldardis.com. The novels received many 5-star reviews from Goodreads and Amazon. The Dark Side of the Sun can be purchased at michaeldardis.com, Amazon, and you can buy an autographed copy through itascabooks.com. It is an outstanding holiday gift.
I'm Connie Burek, co-host of Awakened Living Infusion radio show. Join Michelle Kitzmiller and I as we focus on all aspects of health, wellness, spirituality, and growth from a mind, body, spirit, emotion perspective. On the Awakened Living radio show, we will discuss stress, self-care, fear, happiness, beliefs, communication, joy, pain, trauma, and more. Join us for the Awakened Living Infusion radio show Saturdays at 10 a.m. Let us share with you ways to infuse vitality into life.
During November, the American Diabetes Association is highlighting the numbers that matter most for those living with or at risk of diabetes. If you're unaware of your risk, take the first step by taking the risk test. Get your blood glucose tested and have a conversation with your doctor. If you're living with diabetes, take the first steps for a healthy lifestyle that will make a huge difference. Count Me In is a call to action for all of us. For more information, be sure to visit diabetes.org.
Dad, this is fun. I didn't think I'd like kayaking.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, but I think it's time to head back in.
Okay. Can we come back?
Sure. Hey, be careful getting out of the boat.
It's a kayak, Dad.
I'm going to return the kayak.
Can we walk home?
How about a taxi?
It's a short fare from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a neighborhood park or green space near you. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
Twin Cities Ballet is proudly celebrating 10 years of a Minnesota Nutcracker at Ames Center in Burnsville, December 13th through the 15th. Twin Cities Ballet presents this beloved holiday classic with a Minnesota twist and is one of the most attended must-see holiday events in the Twin Cities. Twin Cities Ballet's A Minnesota Nutcracker will provide delightful entertainment for your whole family. Tickets on sale now at twincitiesballet.org. twincitiesballet.org.
Radio Show. I'm Lori Fitz, your host. We've been talking about the process of writing because I believe everyone out there has a book inside them wanting to be written, but you may not know how to get that written. So today we have part 2 of discussing the writer and editor relationship, and we're exploring it by exploring the book, The Dark Side of the Sun. Excellent book for the holidays. Be sure to think about that. Put it on your gift list. Michael Dardis wrote that book. He is a Minnesota author. And Angela Weekman from AMW Editing helped bring that piece to life. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Lori, again.
Yes.
So we've had a wonderful conversation. We had a great conversation last week, and as well a wonderful conversation this week about this amazing book and how it takes us through 40 years. It's historical fiction, so there needs to be an honoring of the history, but it's also a deep dive into your personal past and looking at your time in Vietnam, relationships. It's a discovery process in how wonderful it was to have a partner that helped you through to go to that deeper dive to make it happen. In our last segment, we were talking about how you do such a beautiful job, Angela, in taking chunks and really doing that deep dive on the chunk. But as we were talking at break, it's not just the chunks were worked on. It's that it didn't disrupt the whole arc or flow, that had been thought about. So by doing the deeper dive, it didn't then change everything else in the book, right, because there'd already been sort of a tacit understanding that you knew what the flow and what the arc was going to be. But now you could do that deeper detail. And I think that's important. And you also mentioned that even though it didn't disrupt the flow, you did end up adding a character in the middle of all of this.
I couldn't help myself.
So tell me about how that went.
Well, I was looking back at my emails, and I came upon the email when all of a sudden Mike says, so I have this new character who she appears in the sequel. So I think I need he said a breadcrumb to add. Now, when I think of breadcrumb, it's this tiny little
mention.
Just a mention. It may not even be by name. It's just this tiny little thing planted.
A hint.
A hint. No, this breadcrumb was about 2 or 3 chapters long.
That's not a breadcrumb.
It had changed the entire trajectory of the last third of the manuscript. And you know what? We did it. And we made it work because we were deep enough in the manuscript itself to understand that the story really did need this new character.
And you had enough of a partnership.
Yes.
And by that time, you had enough of a history.
Yeah.
So there was trust.
Yeah.
And so when this new character arrived, you made her welcome.
Yes.
And you found her home in the book.
And not only that, but there were different chapters that maybe we had to go back to. Maybe there needed to be literal breadcrumbs leading up to it. Like I said.
And then how to insert that.
And we really felt our way through it. I thought it wasn't something that was just a dropping in.
If you had dropped it in, that would have been a sore spot. It would have stuck out.
Yes.
And you would have why?
Yes.
How to embed it.
And I think we've all read books like that where we just all of a sudden say, this is this came out of nowhere.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that you said to me a few weeks ago when we were talking about doing the show is you need a professional edit. Everyone could kind of nod their head and go, yes. But you talked about something a little different. You said, but you deserve the immersion support.
Absolutely.
So
and
tell me about that.
Deserve, that feels like a heavy word, you know, like, oh, gee, I deserve something. And absolutely, you know, like you said, books need to be edited on their own level. And it depends on, you know, again, we talked last week, what are you going to do with this book? Are you going to publish it? Are you going to, you know, have it for friends and family? Whichever level you need, that's, you know, yeah, you're going to have some editing along with that. And that's going to be the things that are just on the page and the polish and putting things together. But beyond that, you do deserve to have a partner in this process who understands your book, who understands you, who respects you, who knows that this is an emotional experience. And even if, you know, not every book does tap into the author's immediate personal experiences, but of course, we all put ourselves in our book. There's a lot of fact and fiction, and that's the process that I go through to be able to say, I'm here to uphold this. And yeah, you do deserve this. You deserve to have someone go deeper, and you deserve to go deeper yourself.
Right.
To not have someone else tell you, no, we're not going to just add in another character. I won't allow that. No.
And it's easy to think that there's a formula and you just have to figure out the formula.
Yeah.
And I loved when you said earlier, I think it was last week, when you were telling us about how your wife kicked you under the table when you first were a little defensive about it, that there's some of that needs to go on, you know, that how do you allow yourself to be vulnerable to someone that will help guide you to a place where you will be better heard by an audience.
Yes, indeed. I mean, that's exactly right. With Angela, the process was pretty clear that the contributions she made to that were all positive, and the ideas and the wording, and it's just getting the message and getting the emotional process down. No small job for a lot of people who can't get their hands around, their mind around that. Even today, I mean, I deal with a lot of people that can't deal with that, and you did a wonderful job with that.
Well, I want to thank you both for being with me for these last 2 weeks and sharing your experience.
Thank you much.
And having our audience learn about the process so they may be inspired to do a bit more.
Yeah.
Actually get out there and have that story take shape, and to have a partner and to learn from someone who did take that partnership and what it meant to them. So again, I want to make sure everyone has The Dark Side of the Sun on your holiday gifting list. It's a wonderful book. Read it first, and then you'll know that you want to give it to a bunch of other people. That's what I ended up doing. All my family have now gotten The Dark Side of the Sun. MichaelDardis.com is where you would find that. And then to find this wonderful partner, Angela Weekman, who can take your book or whatever it is that you want to write and make it come real. Make it for your family. Make it for the public. Whatever that is, go to Angela Weekman. Go to AMW Editing and learn about Angela Weekman's work. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
So thank you all for being a part of this.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Have a great week.